What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. In today's episode, we're out in the garden today. It's kind of a nasty day today. There's really no other way to put it. It's kind of nasty. And even though it's nasty, we're going to make the best of it and we're going to have fun, and I'm excited to be out here. So it's cold, it's damp, but hey, we're not the Wicked Witch of the West, so we're not going to melt. But what are we talking about today? We are talking about how to plant high-intensity lettuce. A lot of you have asked me, Luke, what are the secrets? What have you done to get your lettuce looking so good? A lot of you have seen the videos. I think one of them is titled, How to Grow 5 Times as Much Lettuce, or How to Grow 5 Times More Lettuce in 5 Times Less Space. How to Grow High-Intensity Lettuce, which is pretty self-explanatory. That's what we're going to talk about. That's what today's video is going to be titled, I believe. Or like How to Grow Cut and Come Again Lettuce. Lots of different titles, and we've talked about it a lot, but there's been questions asked that I would love to cover, and there's also things that I didn't cover that I wish I would have covered. And so we're going to consolidate all of that into today's episode, as well as hopefully bring those that have no clue what I'm talking about up to speed. High-intensity lettuce is a method of gardening adapted from biointensive farming. Biointensive farming has been done for decades, basically a way of saying the old farming methods just aren't working, let's adapt them. And what they do is they basically grow things organically, and the idea behind biointensive is that biointensive means that you are the intense bio, meaning that you're growing things organically, and intensive meaning that you are cramming things in close together. And so because we are kind of adapting this to the home garden, biointensive would basically mean that we are we're spacing things a whole lot closer together. We are keeping the soil very fertile. We are tending the beds in a way that does not compact them, so we're not running them over with large farming implements and stuff like that. We're not compacting the soil. We basically plant in rows, and each seed is only spaced a ½ inch apart. And when they grow up, they basically self-thin themselves. The ones that can't compete, kind of survival of the fittest, they end up kind of self-thinning down to maybe about 1 plant per inch or so. And as they grow up, and each row is so close to each other, we only space our rows about 4 to maybe 5 inches apart at most. So when they grow up, they actually grow into each other and they self-support. And this allows them to grow up rather than sprawl out. And when they grow up, you can actually grow even more food in less space because they're not taking up ground space, they're taking up air space. They're growing vertically by supporting themselves and actually kind of mounding like that. The leaves press up against each other, and because the leaves want to touch the sun, they can't go like this because they would compete. So instead, they grow like this. And that helps you to grow that much more food in that much less space. So in summary, that is what high-intensity spacing lettuce is. So it's starting to rain, so I'm going to bring you guys in close so we can get this lettuce planted, because then I'm going to show you, just like I said, I'm going to talk about spacing, I'm going to talk about the soil, I'm going to talk about fertilizing, and all that other good stuff. One question before we do get started is, Luke, can I grow high-intensity lettuce for heads? And the answer is no, sadly. If you want to grow lettuce for heads, I would suggest going the biointensive farming method, which is 6 plants in a square foot. That's going to allow you to grow heads of lettuce because they need a little bit more space. These are so close together that they don't form heads. They're going to try to form heads, but they're ultimately going to be cut basically for leaves. And then when you cut them for leaves, they're going to regrow. And that is one of the benefits to this method, which is why it allows us to grow nearly 20 pounds of lettuce in 10 square feet versus what might be only about 4 or 5 pounds in the same amount of square footage. So it allows you to grow so much more food because you're actually cutting, then they're regrowing. You're not planting new plants. You're just letting them regrow and you're cutting them again. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is the soil. You'll notice the soil is very dark. It's very rich. That's because we actually just amended this with fresh compost. Having fertile soil is so important because when you're growing tons of plants in a small space, you do need to make sure they're not going to be competing for any nutrients. That helps you grow more food in less space. Also, the soil is very well draining. If it's very compacted and hard, you're not going to have good root development, and you want the roots to go down through the soil, not out, because if they go out, they're going to bump into each other, and they're going to say, whoa, there's a plant there. Now we're going to start competing. Even though they shouldn't have to compete, sometimes plant roots will actually get intertwined and they start to compete. So having a very well-draining soil allows the roots to go down through the soil rather than out And so that's really important as well. Now, when we dig our rows, or we make our rows, we want to make our furrows. And again, we're spacing them only about 4.5, 5 inches apart. We're going to plant our seeds, 1 seed every 1/2 inch. It's going to seem like a lot of seed. In this row here, we might plant, and obviously, we're not being super specific here with our spacing. I mean, it's roughly a 1/2 inch, but we might put about, 40 to 50 seeds in this row here. And then the little gem butterhead. These have white seeds, so you might be able to see them a little better. And I'm not particular, about, like, if I have one seed come in that's not a 1/2 inch away from the next one, like if 2 seeds fall in the same space, I don't even care. And now that we have our seeds planted, we're simply going to cover them up, just like that. And we are good to go. Now all we have to do is just water them in, and we can continue if we want. Or what we can do is we can plant successions. You can actually plant, this row out in a week or 2, so that when these are coming up, these are going to be at a different level of maturity than these. And that way you have a staggered harvest as well. So there's lots of versatility with this, but I absolutely love high intensity lettuce. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about, as it's still starting to rain, the next thing I want to talk about is fertilizing. A lot of people ask, Luke, do you fertilize? The answer is absolutely. We fertilize with Trifecta. This is an all-purpose fertilizer of our choice. It's an organic fertilizer that we use, and it allows us to fertilize the crops so that there's even less competition for nutrients. Because you have to remember, plants will compete for several things. They compete for water, they compete for soil, or space in the soil, their root zone. They compete for nutrients, and they compete for sunlight. So if you can basically reduce competition, that allows you to grow more plants because they're not going to be competing. And so by fertilizing, you're going to ensure that there's not any competition for fertilizer. Now, when we're talking about things like watering, how do we water? Well, you can run things like drip line if you so choose. I prefer just to use core gardening. We have cores in this bed. Core gardening is another method of gardening that we absolutely love, and we have lots of videos on that. Not enough time to talk about that method in this video, but basically it allows us to hardly water at all. And when we do water, we just hand water. So that's how we water. But the really nice thing, like I said in the beginning of this episode, is that when we do high intensity lettuce, we don't have to worry as much about watering because the leaves help shade the soil. And when the leaves help shade the soil, you end up with less evaporation. So you end up having to water a lot less. Also, things like drought and things like heat don't affect it as much either. And the reason why is because they're shading the soil. And so when you shade the soil is going to be cooler. So on hot days, if your plants are normally going to be stressed from being too hot, they're going to be a lot less stressed when they're planted high intensity because the sun can't touch the soil. Sun stress has more of an effect on the root system than it does the leaves. So if the soil is cool, your plants are cool. Just remember that. It's kind of like you in a pool. Your body might be submerged in cool water. So when it's 95 degrees out, you feel cool. Your head is exposed, but your body is cool, right? Your body is able to absorb the cool soil, or the cool water, the temperature from the cool water, I should say. So you don't feel the heat as much. And the same exact thing applies to your plants. So on hot days, they're a lot less stressed, and this results in less bolted plants, so your plants don't go to seed as fast. The next question I get asked is about harvesting. And like I said, we do have a lot of videos on harvesting. I can't do harvesting in this video, but basically we do cut and come again. It is a process of just taking a knife or some scissors, grabbing the tops of the plants and cutting and leaving, about 1.5 to 2.5 inches of plant. And that bottom plant is going to regrow. As long as you don't cut it too low to the soil, it's going to sprout new leaves and it's going to keep growing. And the final question we get asked is, can any type of lettuce be used in high intensity lettuce? So like, let's say you're growing iceberg. The answer is yes. You can grow iceberg lettuce in high intensity. Like I said before, just because you are growing a heading variety of lettuce doesn't mean you can't grow at high intensity, because when you grow it for its leaves, it's not going to have an opportunity to form a head. So you can grow iceberg this way. You're just going to harvest the leaves much sooner. They won't be as crisp and luscious and succulent as they are a nice firm head of iceberg. But you can grow iceberg lettuce for leaves, no problem. You can grow leaf lettuce for leaves, no problem. You can also grow things that aren't even really lettuce. You can grow things like spinach this way. You can grow things like arugula this way. You don't have to apply this to just lettuce. Now, if you are interplanting, if you're growing like a leaf, like a spring mix or like a leaf lettuce mix, you want to make sure that you keep the plants separate, because lettuce is going to grow a whole lot differently than spinach or arugula will. So keep those separate, but you can still grow them very much the same way with the same spacing and not have any problems at all. So yeah, you can grow any type of lettuce this way. Doesn't matter. All right, and that just about does it. We are going to be covering these seeds up, and because we're getting some rain, I won't have to come back and water them, which is always nice. But that just about does it for high intensity lettuce. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. As always, if you do have any questions, post them down in the comments box below. I'd be happy to answer them. But I don't think there's a whole lot more that we have to cover in today's episode. Like I said, I covered most of it. But if you do have any other questions, don't hesitate on posting it. I'll be here for about 30 minutes answering questions, so feel free to throw those questions down there. Also, if you did enjoy, make sure to throw a like up there, subscribe if you're not yet already, and we'll catch you all on the next episode. All right, take care, everyone. Grow big or go home. Bye.